for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, we want you fired up about our guest. The author today that we are spotlighting is S. Jones Marshall. He has written the book Strengthening the Mind. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we are about to get started. And let me tell you just a little bit about S. He is a 38-year-old survivor of a traumatic brain injury, a TBI. He has made trips to both Columbus, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. to meet with members of Congress to advocate for people with traumatic brain injuries as well as other disabilities. And I love it. Thank you, S, for being on the show today. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Now, I can't wait to talk to you about your book, but I want to ask you first about being an author. Is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that you simply needed to write to help people understand about TBI?
Well, actually, I started writing poetry for a class project, so I stumbled into it.
Absolutely. And it's really funny because a lot of the authors that I talk to, they say the exact same thing. Had no idea I was going to be an author, but life presented the opportunity. I hear you. Now, the title, Strengthening the Mind, I like it. Can you tell us how did you decide upon that as your title?
Well, it has a lot of a lot of mind, a lot of poems to do with the mind and strengthening it.
Absolutely. Now, is your book just about your incident that happened, or does it include other stories as well? What is your book about?
My poetry is written from the point of how I perceive the world.
And we all, it's quite interesting, we all have our view of the world at the various ages that we are, and as we grow and mature, so does our world view. As things happen to us, our view can change. I know being a breast cancer survivor, I look at this particular side of my life differently than before to live my best life possible. So I agree with you to make sure that you're looking at life positively. Now, your injury, I know that not every person wants to talk fully about their injury, and please share only what you're comfortable with. But how did you receive your injury?
I was hit by a car and suffered a bruise to the brain stem, which threw me into a coma for almost 8 weeks to the exact minute.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I am glad that you are still here to share your story, your poetry, and to be an advocate. Now, what is life like living with a TBI?
I mean, my life is just like anybody else's. I just have a few more challenges to deal with.
And I can understand that because when we talk to others that are handy able, we notice that they say the same thing. It might take me a little longer to do the task, but I can still do the task. So usually if we are simply patient with another person, then we can all achieve what we're trying to achieve. So I love it. And thank you for reminding everyone to just kind of be patient with one another. Now, how has writing poetry helped you deal with your injury? Or has it helped you deal with your injury?
Yeah, joke around, I say the reason I write poetry is to keep from having to go see a shrink.
Well, I know one of the things that I suggest to my clients is that they journal. A part of their therapy is journaling. So you are so right. Writing does help. I like your sense of humor, as I like it. I like it. Well, it is time for us to go to a break, everyone. So before we go, let me make sure that I mention again. The title of the book is Strengthening the Mind. The author is S. Jones Marshall. Of course, it's available on Amazon and where books are sold. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is S. Jones Marshall, and we're talking about the book Strengthen the Mind. Now, as my next question for you is about opportunity. Have you noticed that any doors in particular have been opened because you're able to write poetry?
Well, I don't know that they've been open or shut because of my ability to write poetry, but I have made my way into a lot of situations to where my being able to write poetry has helped.
You know, it's so interesting how God allows what we do to be utilized in a way that can definitely help others. So I like what you're saying there. You don't know if it's opened, but and you don't know if it's closed any, but you know that you're definitely moving forward. And I like that. Now, when you are, let me rephrase. When you were putting the book together, uh, for the readers. Did you have any particular reader in mind? Were you including like teenagers, or do you think that this is a book of poetry more appropriate for over college age?
No, my poetry, I would say, would speak to anybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Now, when you were putting your poems together, did you have a particular message or theme that you wanted to make sure the reader grabbed having read your poetry?
Just that people with a brain injury can reach any goals that they set, and they can achieve them if they keep moving forward.
That is a good message, and I think that is a message we can all definitely grab a hold of. Keep moving forward. Now, if you could tell someone who is starting their journey of living with a traumatic brain injury, be it that it's the person who has suffered the injury or perhaps their family or caretaker, what words of encouragement or advice would you give to them?
Just to always know that they can lead a normal life if they strive towards that goal.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another bit of great advice. We don't need to allow the things that have happened to us to stop us from being all that we have been called to be. I have to agree with you there. Now, as my next question for you is about the future. Many authors will say, I only want to write one book. Others have said, I want to write till I can't write anymore. Where do you think your writing future is going to lead you? Do you wish to write more books?
I'll think that I've already self-published 7 books. I just enjoy the process of writing the poem.
Mhm. I like that. Now, do you find that there's a particular time of day that really you seem to be more inspired to write? Perhaps morning or later in the day. What's the perfect time for you?
For me, anytime.
Just when the mood hits and you get flowing with the poetry, I love it. He says, "Get it down and get it out." I love it. I love it. Well, as I have enjoyed my time with you today, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us, Strengthening the Mind. I love that title, and I think that you are an inspiration to all. Do you have any final words that you would like to leave with our listening audience today?
Well, I just want people with a brain injury to know that your life is not over. It just has simply taken a detour on the road of life. And if you keep moving forward, anything is possible within reason.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you again, S, for being a guest with me here today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Of course. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Bostessa. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us of the tongue of a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about parenting. That's right. We are going to talk to someone who's going to help us understand a little bit more about the foster care system and a touch of adoption. My guest today is Dawna Dooley, and her book is You Came to Stay. Now, you know what I usually tell you. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we're about to get started. Good morning, Dawna. Thank you so much for joining me today on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good morning, Dr. Angela.
Now, usually what we do before we start talking about your book is give each author an opportunity to introduce themselves to those out there in the listening world who may not know who you are. So my first question to you is, who are you, Dawna Dooley? What makes Dawna Dawna?
Well, I am a mother of one. I've been married 23 years, and I've worked in the child care field, and now I am trying to be an author. So I guess that's what makes Dawna Dawna.
Gotcha. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that that was simply what life presented you at the time?
Well, actually, wanting to be an author came to me after having my son come into our home, and we were foster parents. But I always had a love for children's books once I started in the childcare field. I had originally worked in daycare and in the preschool industry, and I ended up getting a love for children's books and early literacy. And so I always had a passion for children's books. And then when our son came along, I had an inspiration one night while I was sleeping, and we were foster parents, and this idea came to me for this book. And I got up, and I would say within 20 minutes, I had the book written down.
Mm-hmm. Now, the title of your book, You Came to Stay, how did you determine that to be your title?
Well, I determined that title because in foster care, children don't always stay. And so they come to stay for just a short period. And in our case, when I had written the story, we didn't know whether or not our son was going to stay or not, because sometimes children get adopted and sometimes they leave. And in our case, our son was fortunate enough that he was adopted by his foster parents. So originally, I was going to give the book a different title, but because after it was written, the story, but I didn't publish it until 2014. But I wrote it when my son was just, about 6 months old, and he was born in 2005. I was going to give it a different title because we were just fostering him at the time, and it was going to be just a foster care book. And so anyways, he came to stay permanently after we found out we got to adopt him. So that's why I changed it to You Came to Stay.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your opinion, do you feel that fostering children is more than just a, well, let me ask that a different way. Many people feel that the foster care system, either you are doing a job, you're providing a service, and the children have some place to stay, and others feel as though that it is a purpose in life for them, that it is their calling to love on the children, to nurture the children while they are under their care. How do you feel about the fostering system as far as being a foster parent is concerned?
Well, as a foster parent, I feel that it is an obligation to love and nurture the children. I don't think that people should get into it as just a job. If you're getting into it just for the idea of it being a job, then you're getting into it for all the wrong reasons. I think you have to have a compassion for what you're doing if you want to be a foster parent. That's one of the reasons why my husband and I got into it. We got into it with the idea and the hopes of helping children, because we couldn't have our own children, but we were also hoping in the end that we may eventually be able to adopt a child and help a child who needed a family. And that's what eventually happened for us. We were able to adopt a beautiful little baby boy whose mother was a crack addict and a drug. Like I said, she was a crack addict and an alcoholic, and she wasn't able to ever be able to turn her life around. And so we were able to take him and nurture him and provide a loving home for him. And so that's why we got into the business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When creating the book, did you have any particular portions that were more of a highlight to you that you really enjoyed writing or sharing that particular portion of the book?
For me, the highlight or the main part of the story I like the best is when the foster parents at the end send him on his way, because it's not a guarantee that every foster parent is going to keep a child forever. And their place is really not to hope to adopt a child like we did. We were just lucky. They're an interim home, and they're supposed to provide a family atmosphere until that child either returns home to their family, which is the hope and expectation. But if they can't, then hopefully they will find a loving forever home. And the idea is the end of that story is that they send him on his way, knowing that they did their best to provide him with the most loving, caring home so that he had a stable life until he went on his way to wherever he was going. And I guess that's the message I want all foster parents to know. That's your responsibility. That's your obligation when you get into fostering. And then the very last page, some people get it and some people don't that have read my book, is that little boy grows up and he's that social worker in the end, bringing the new boy back to the foster parents that they are now receiving another child. So that is the stigma that those people left on him as a child. He remembered what they did for him and he became a social worker. So the last 2 pages of the story are the most meaningful for me because it shows that foster parents can have a meaning in a child's life if they do their job correctly as parents, not just as a job.
Mm-hmm,
And that's, I guess, that's the essence of what the story is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I want people to feel the love for the kids in their home. Like, we have known so many foster parents over the years, like even doing respite, where people will go on holidays and ask us to do respite for their foster kids, and they will leave the foster kids in our care. And I know you need a break sometimes from fostering your foster children, but they'll go on holidays with their own natural children and they won't take their foster children on a family holiday. And some of these kids have never ever known what it's like to go on a family holiday. And I just felt that that's so injustice to them. When we had our son and before we even knew we were going to adopt him, we always took him everywhere with us. We took him on holidays. We treated him like the family. And that's the expectation that I would hope that all foster parents would have, regardless whether they're yours or not. You know, if you're going to go on a family holiday and the social workers and the social system says, yes, you can take that child on a holiday with you, take them. Don't just shove them off to another foster home and say, hey, can you do respite for us? We're going to go to Disneyland or we're going to go camping. We don't want to take them with us. They're not part of our family. You know, how do you think that child feels that's in your care? And, you know, then you come back from a loving holiday and then you get them back and you're talking about all the fun that you've had and they have to listen to that. I just think that that is so demeaning to that child. And, so I just hope that this book will be an inspiration for foster parents, you know, to understand their role.
Absolutely. And you said a lot there, and I have to agree with you. My 2 cents worth, if you are a foster parent who does that, if you are a step parent who does that, if you are a friend or a neighbor who is doing that, that says so much more about you and your pettiness than it does about that foster child or that child that needs that love and attention. And it is definitely shining a light on how small of a person you are. I think that I have to agree with you. I think that adults that do things to children to purposely make them feel like outcasts or make them feel unloved or unwelcomed, they're just not good people. And I hope that people see them for exactly who they are. That child is not a paycheck, but someone who needs to be loved and nurtured during that time. You know, we have a very interesting place right now where people talk about how they're such great Christians, but yet they are not being that good Samaritan that we've read about and helping that person who needs your love or your attention or just that olive branch during their time. So I have to agree with you there. Dawna, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, if you could please remind everyone of the title of your book, where we can get a copy, and, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay. The title of my book is You Came to Stay. You can find it at Chapters Indigo, Amazon, or Barnes & Noble on the internet, and also Waterstones in the UK. And I'm also on Facebook. And anyways, you just have to look up my name, Dawna Dooley, or You Came to Stay, and you will find me on the internet.
Alrighty, everyone, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Dawna Dooley, and we're talking about her book, You Came to Stay. And we're talking about the fostering system and what it's like to be a foster parent who actually cares and has a very happy ending included in our conversation today, and I love it. Now, Dawna, as someone who lives in Canada, you found an illustrator that was not located in your home country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, yes, I found him on Odesk on the internet, and his name was Omar, and he was from Bangladesh, and he was really an interesting fellow. I really believe that God works in mysterious ways. I had been looking for a person to draw my pictures, and a lot of illustrators are very expensive. And I came across this gentleman, and he gave me such a fantastic price on my illustrations that I couldn't pass him up. And I'm hoping that I can complete my promise to him. I had promised him that if this book ever took off and did well, I would share in my profits with him. And we made a deal. And so I'm really hoping that if this book does take off in sales, I will be able to give back to Umar and just bless him as he blessed me, because without him, this book would never have taken place. And I truly believe that God brought him into my life for a reason. And it was so funny because this book took stages to come together. And as I said, I wrote it when my son was 6 months old. I put it together in 2014 throughout the year with Omar's help. And my son was, I guess, just in elementary school at the time. And him and Omar would connect with each other via the computer. And my son would give him remarks back on the pictures. And my son was the one that basically came up with the illustration ideas for the book. And so it was kind of neat to see them interacting with each other. And my son was learning about Bangladesh then and learning about third world countries and poverty through him. And it was just a phenomenon. Sorry, not a phenomenon. You understand what I mean. It was a wonderful time and an experience learning from him. And that's how we came to know him. And he blessed our lives.
Sure that I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that the person who is listed on the cover of your book, the person whose name's listed there, that person, out of just pure love for you, illustrated your book kind of for free, on that you promised to pay him after the fact, and that if you sold any books, you would give him a portion of those proceeds? Is that what I understand? Is that right?
That's basically it. He basically did the work for dirt free compared to a lot of...
That is wonderful. So listeners, if by chance, do you see the love that this gentleman has offered? If he doesn't know this lady, and he has illustrated her book for free, we know how much illustrators cost. Illustrators cost a lot more than just someone doing a cover for your book. If you are looking for an illustrator, perhaps reach out. Not only purchase a copy of this book so that the story gets out and this gentleman can also make money, but that perhaps you could use him in your illustration and see how she is shining a light on someone else, and not only saying, hey, we need to be great foster parents, but look at the love that we can all have in the writing community when we pay it forward. Such a beautiful story there. What a great way. Thank you so much for sharing that and giving him a shout out. That is awesome, Dawna. Thank you for doing that. Now, by choosing to write a children's, what was the main message that you were really hoping to get out there in writing it as a children's book as opposed to writing it as a book, geared towards or especially for adults?
Well, the main message, as I said before, was just so that it could be a learning tool for foster parents, but also because of my early literacy background in childcare and in preschool. If you look at the words and the wording in my book, for example, you'll see that there is a lot of repetition, like you came to stay for how you came to stay for how long nobody could say. And that's pretty much repeated a lot in the book. And then you'll see that there is a lot of simple words like smile and giggle and words like that. So I made it fairly simple and as an easy to read learning book for children as well, so that way it could be a reading tool as well as a learning tool, and that way kids could ask questions when they're sitting with their parents that may not even know about what foster care is, or like, why is this little boy going away? Like, why can't he stay? And it can be used as a good conversation piece and a learning message to other kids that, and then they can say, you know what? Hey, I have Johnny in my class. He goes through that. What can I do to maybe understand or help him better? Maybe that's why he acts out in class, and then they can understand the situations around them that they've never even thought about. And,
now, let me ask you this question, because it may be different from country to country, not just state to state, but country to country, because you are not located in the United States. You are in Alberta, Canada. Now, with that being said, what is the reason or the law behind a foster parent not being able to keep a child past X amount of months or X amount of years? What is the reason that they state there? How does the law go?
When we had our son, they had put in a new law that basically after 15 months, they had to have some kind of ruling put in place as to what was going to happen with them for a forever family. So technically, by the time they've been in care after 15 months, they had to have a strategy in place as to what was going to happen for that child, whether the parents' rights were going to be taken away from them and stripped, and they were going to be taken to court, or whether they were going to end up being put back into a family situation where there was going to be a permanent guardianship kind of relationship, or are they going to be put up for adoption? But usually by the time 15 months was up, the social worker had to have some kind of plan in place for the child, at least that's what happened with our son. And so we knew that by the time 15 months was up, we knew that we were going to be able to adopt him because they had searched all the avenues as to what they were going to do with him.
Right. Now, next question: if your son had it's a little bit different with him because you guys wanted to keep him, wanted to adopt him. For that foster parent who or I'm sorry, not foster parent, for that child who has been with the foster parent for 15 months and no one is there to adopt them. They're still not 18 years old, so they're not going to age out. But would they be able to stay? I guess that's what I'm asking. Would they be able to stay in your home for another time period, or would they be forced to leave your home and go to a different foster parent simply because 15 months has expired?
If they're over 18 years old, you mean? Or
if they're still a child, so they haven't aged out, so they're still a child, and you've had them as a foster parent, you've had them for 15 months, and I understand what you're saying, that there needs to be a plan in place, and the social worker is working on finding them, of course, adoptive parents. But if they don't find them adoptive parents, and you as their foster parent has had them for 15 months already, does the law dictate that that child must leave your home simply because it's been 15 months? Or would you be able to continue to, nurture them until they're able to find an adoptive parent?
No, I don't think that they would necessarily remove them from your home if they haven't at that time, after 15 months, found either a full-time guardianship or adoptive home yet. I think that if they're still in that foster home, they would, keep you in there. But that is, at the time, from what I understood, is that they had a 15-month, time limit that they were supposed to try and but if they haven't, I don't think that they would do anything. For example, our son had a half sister, and she lived in foster care. She went into foster care when she was, I think, she was about 18 months old, and she was, because this rule came into place when our son was in our home, and she was living in a different foster home. She was finally then able to be adopted at the age of, she was 7.5, I believe, with her family. So,
right. No, I was just wondering with the what it does on a child psychologically, to only know that they're going to be with this particular set of parents, and it could be country to, like I said before, country to country has their own rules and regulations, but just knowing that I'm only allowed to stay here for X amount of time, and if I don't get adopted, I'm forced to go to live with someone else because the law simply states that I have to move. Because here in the States, we hear about these horrible stories of foster children moving from foster home to foster home to foster home and never really feeling like they're putting down roots and being able to be safe with foster parents that you really love and adore. Even if they don't adopt you, just knowing that, man, I could stay with these foster parents for 5 years or 7 years or however long it is if I don't get adopted. So thank you so much for that clarification with you with your situation. Now, overall, out of all that you have been able to accomplish, and you have such a positive story about what has happened, and you've been able to share it with the book, and I think that is a wonderful thing. And listeners, please be sure, if this is something that is near and dear to your heart, please be sure to check out the book. The book has beautiful illustrations, and I love the rich, warm, vibrant colors. This is not a book that was kind of thrown together. You could tell that everything was done with such love, and that says a lot about who the two of you are, Dawna, and thank you so much for taking that time to do that. But overall, what was your goal and hope by writing and putting out You Came to Stay, what was your overall goal? What do you want to achieve with this book?
Well, my overall goal and what I want to achieve is eventually is if this book, and God, I've always said that this book was given to me by God. I believe that God presented me with this book. Like I said earlier in the interview, I had woken up one night and it was shortly after we thought our son was actually going to be taken away from our home. And it's like you were asking, when can they take a child away? And it's very frustrating when you're dealing with a system. We had only had him for 6 months, and we actually thought they were going to take him away, but we dealt with it, and he ended up staying. But at that time, I woke up in the middle of the night, and we were going through this, and I felt that God had given me the words for this book, and that's how I wrote it. And as I said, this book came in stages, and as you can see, it's now 2021, and I'm sitting here talking with you, and I believe that God brought you into my life and asked me to do this radio show with you, so I could tell people about the book. And I guess the goal is, if people are listening and they're hearing my message, and this book is promoted in the right way, and people feel in their hearts to buy my book, I'm not in it to get rich. If I make any money from this book, it is just so that I can make enough to continue to write other books. And I have a few other titles up there that I would like to write about children visiting a nursing home and how they impact seniors. And I have a book that I'd like to write about how children are impacted by grandparents that have dementia.
Absolutely.
So
That is
those
awesome.
funds.
Well, thank
So
you
that's what I would do with you.
for spending time with us here today on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I love the story that you have out there, and I think that so many people will definitely be touched by You Came to Stay. Thank you again so much for being a guest on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I thank you for taking the time to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.